This is Support is Sexy, episode 338, with artist Amira Rahim. Welcome to Support is Sexy. I'm your host, Elayne Fluker, entrepreneur, author, and founder of Chic Rebellion Media. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, I interview inspiring women entrepreneurs who share their wins and their lessons to help you take your business and your life to the next level and create something sexy. Here we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Support is Sexy. I'm happy to have you here. You know, it just would not be the same without you. And if you're listening to this in real time, happy Monday. I'm excited to have you. And I'm excited to have our guest today, Amira Rahim. Amira is an incredible artist whose work I actually saw on Instagram. That's the first place I saw it. Dug more into her website, just seeing all of the things she's creating with her art and even outside of her art, and became really excited about what she's up to. And this conversation gets me excited because it was honestly inspirational to me as a creative, but we also talk about the process as an artist, being a creative, what impact you want to have, what your legacy will be, what kind of ways that you could hold your art, meaning holding it precious, holding it sacred, all that good creative stuff. If you're into that, you're going to love it. So what else you hear from Amira today is you have to be able to ask for the sale and create a way for people to pay you. Be unafraid to tear apart your work and start again. That goes for art and in business. Can't hold things too precious, right? Also, why it takes time to close the gap between your capabilities and your taste level. Getting over the idea that things have to be hard for it to be beautiful. Also, Amira shares her top marketing tools as an artist. We talk about, too, getting over this idea of the quote-unquote starving artist and why you never really know what your legacy will be. So again, if you're an artist, a creative, or just interested in art and creativity, you're going to love this episode. So without further ado, Amira Rahim. So Amira, thank you so much for joining us for an episode of Support is Sexy. I'm excited to chat with you.
Me too. Thanks for having me here.
Of course. So our first question, when did you first fall in love with entrepreneurship?
Okay. I think my answer, I fell in love with entrepreneurship probably a little late in the game. And I almost want to say accidentally because I never planned on running a business or anything of that nature. But once I sold my first painting online, I think that's when I got really excited about being my own boss and getting rewarded for my work.
What was that moment like for you?
It was like magic. It was amazing. I remember I posted a painting in this Facebook group for expats, and it's funny because I had been posting my work online for about a year and kind of like looking like a hobby artist, I think, because there was no ask for the sale. Like I never kind of put two and two together to realize that you have to also ask people for the sale, and you kind of have to give them a way to pay you. And so up until this point, I will always kind of share new work and just kind of like, oh, here's what I did today.
And people would like it and move on.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And then one day I had posted in this Facebook group, I was like, does anyone want to buy this? And like 4 people messaged me, and a lady, she like sent me some money on PayPal. She was like very eager to get it. And it's funny because actually that lady, she found my work through a friend of hers. And I think her friend had told her that she liked this painting and it was in a different time zone. So this particular lady was up at the right time and she was able to pay me first. And the friend who referred her to me ended up purchasing maybe 5 or 6 paintings over time. But She always kind of told me she always told me that they were kind of like competing to see who could buy my work the fastest.
And you were like, great, keep going.
Yeah. So that was cool. I mean, I think kind of like I had realized that, okay, if you ask people for the sale, then they know that it's for sale. And then to see 4 different people interested in purchasing it and then actually collecting money for it, that's when I was like, okay, this is fun.
And I think, thank you for sharing that story. There's so many lessons in there. One, about the ask, of course. Sometimes we don't think to make the ask. People don't even know that you're selling it. They might think you're just showing it, right? And then with
Yeah.
whatever kind of work you're doing. But then also the fact, as you mentioned, creating a way for people to pay you. And there's so many ways for entrepreneurs to do that now. But that's another thing of thinking, well, how would someone pay me if they do want to buy this? What does that look like? And creating those containers, as I've heard someone else call it, for people to be able to pay you.
Yeah, that's so important.
And then how did you change things, if at all, after that moment, after you realized, okay, I can sell these things online? Was it a major shift for you?
It was, because this particular painting in and of itself meant something in my progression as an artist, because I had painted over a piece. And so I had done sort of like a seascape beach scene, and it was what a beach scene looks like. It had some blues, it had some greens, and, it was pretty expected, I would say. And then after a few months, I had repainted over this painting, and this time around, it was way more abstract. It had a lot of texture, and it even had, I think, like these flashes of pink and like hot pink, and it was nothing like what an actual landscape looked like in terms of the color scheme. And so to see so many people respond positively to really like a risk that I was taking in my own expression was very kind of like magnetic to me. It was very like, just like illuminating and, electric, and like all those feels that you get when you arrive at a painting and people respond to it. So I think ever since then, I started painting more and more abstractly and kind of pushing the limits in terms of color. And now I've completely gone off the deep end with both. Yeah.
That's so beautiful. And the fact with that one that you weren't afraid to, I don't know if this is something artists do often. I hadn't heard this, but the fact that you painted over something that you had already done, as opposed to thinking, oh, that just didn't work, I'll just keep doing more of the same. But you added something to that particular painting.
Yeah, it really teaches you detachment. It teaches you how to detach, and kind of like this idea of looking at something that you have and recognizing that it's good, but also understanding that it could be better, and almost taking the risk to destroy it and to kind of get something greater at the end of it. I remember when I would do these workshops a couple years ago, I would tell the women there that were painting with me to ruin it, like ruin your painting. You made it something nice, okay, like now you have to ruin it. And it's just like, it's so hard, I think, in the beginning, because we kind of feel like we'll never be able to do it again. But I think, it's just a muscle, and you get, as you develop that skill of uncertainty and failing and, looking at like nasty art that you've made and understanding that it's just a stepping stone to something beautiful, then it is scary. But, you can definitely kind of hone in on that skill, and it's fun. It's really fun when you do it. It just takes a lot of time.
Right. I think that's a great lesson for anyone, any business or anything that you're doing with. It's like not being too precious about it, but it feels precious. Like when I've talked to women or other entrepreneurs who have changed the names of their businesses or gone a different direction. I've done that, and you pivot, and it's not exactly the same as painting over something, but it sort of is the way you hold it, precious, and don't want to reinvent it. But then you come out with something beautiful.
Oh my gosh, yes. Like what you said really just reminded me. I was in Sedona last month taking an art workshop by this really renowned artist by the name of Jean Bissett. And she told us during the workshop that art is sacred, it's not precious. And there's a difference, like every time we step to the canvas and we express ourselves and we're really answering this highest calling of creating, that in and of itself is sacred, no matter what it looks like. But it's not precious, like I've created paintings where I've literally walked across the canvas. I've stepped on paintings. You can go to art museums and you'll see like lint and, what's his name? Jackson Pollock has the cigarette butts in the painting. So it's not precious in and of itself. Art is not a precious commodity, but it's a sacred. I think it's something sacred that we're tapping into, whether you're looking at art in a museum or if you decide to purchase one for your home. That whole experience, we're kind of tapping into something greater than ourselves. And a lot of people, I think the people that love art and like, participating in this conversation in their daily lives, they understand that they're tapping into that energy, that creative energy. And that's like really amazing. That's the proof that we're human.
Right. I love that. Now tell us your background and where you grew up. Are you from New Jersey?
Yeah, born and raised.
Jersey.
Yeah, where are you from?
I'm from New York. I'm in Atlanta now, but from New York.
Street.
Exactly.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I'm from Newark, New Jersey, so not too far from New York City. And I spent my childhood there, my high school years, and yeah, it's a really interesting city.
New York or Jersey? In Jersey.
Newark, New Jersey.
Newark, New Jersey. Yeah, it's changing quite a bit.
Yeah, I was just down there for the breast cancer walk a couple weekends ago, and it's a lot. It's interesting. Like we have a Whole Foods downtown now, and I'm like, what?
Exactly.
It's cool.
What
yeah.
How would you describe yourself as a young person growing up in Newark?
I mean, I think there's myself. I feel like at home, I was always. Fortunately for me, I had a really, I think, kind of safe place to grow. I had a really safe home, and my dad is kind of like a nerd, like probably one of the most uncool black men you'll ever meet. Like he loves planes and like computers and stuff like that. I've never seen him watch sports ever. And my brother really adopted that as well. And my parents just always kind of pushed this idea of, just getting good grades. And I just love to read. I was one of those kids where I was like at the dinner table and my mom would be like, put the book down. I was just like a voracious reader. I used to draw a lot as well. I kind of realized that, early on I could just look at things and then translate them onto paper. So I thought it was like a superpower. And I was like, so that was my, how when you're young, I feel like everyone has that thing, there's this one thing about you that you kind of feel like you're not as bad as maybe you think you are, because your identity isn't fully formed yet when you're, I don't know, under the age of 35. And so you kind of have to just kind of wander through life and figuring out what sets you apart. And, fortunately for me, it was always my ability to draw. But it was a very private thing as well. It's not something you could really share with people, like singing, where you could kind of perform and do a little something in front of your family, or like dancing or something like that. Drawing was something I would just do in my house and, kind of look out the window, and just something I always did in isolation. But I knew that I had that ability, and I think it just gave me this inner confidence that was able to kind of stick with me as I got older.
That's such a blessing, though, to know, because as you said, we all have our superpowers. But for you and certain people who realize it at a young age is a powerful thing, because some of us are still floating around trying to figure out what our superpower is and having one and not being able to recognize it. Right. So that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's interesting, like kind of this idea of what you get praised for as a kid, because I don't think my parents really praised me for my ability to draw. I don't remember them doing that. They always praised me for my grades. And so when it came time to go to college, I was very interested in like being an academic, because that's what I always got rewarded for in school, just being a good student and everything. Art was never something where I was like, I should do this, I'm good at this. It's like I knew I was good at it, but I felt like it was more accepted for me to be good at the academic stuff. Because like, and I think for a lot of people in their minds, being good in school naturally translates into like getting a good job and, making a lot of money and stuff like that.
Right. You're sort of on that track.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting because now I make my living doing the thing that, I don't know, I wasn't really expected to do, but it's something that I was always like, it was always a part of me. So I think it's a real blessing that I get to do this. And it just feels really natural.
Now, when you went to college, you studied law, right?
I was kind of like pre-law. My major was sociology, but in my summers off, I did a lot of pre-law programs and like this additional enrichment. I was a part of CLEO. It's like a Thurgood Marshall program based in DC. And so they would kind of reach out to underrepresented communities in the legal field and basically like nurse them to law school. So I had the entire pathway to law school for me, just clear, like completely clear. LSATs would have been paid for. I took the LSATs. I had a stipend to take that exam. My law school admissions or applications would have been covered. And I was able to attend these really great summer programs where you can live like on a law school campus and you're kind of treated like a law student. And so I was like obsessed with going to law school and being a lawyer and just like learning as much as I could about the law. It was just really fascinating to me.
Where did you go to college?
University of Pittsburgh.
Okay. So you're on this track. You have all these things that would have been paid for you with law school. Clear, open road. As you said, everyone is probably expecting you to do this. What happened? What changed? Or did you continue down that path for a while?
Yeah, it's so interesting. There were a lot of things, but part of my sociology degree included me writing this honors thesis. And my thesis was on perceptions of social support for first-generation college students, because it was something that was really relevant to my experience, and I wanted to explore that further. And at the time, I kind of thought, I'll either go to law school or I'll go the PhD route. And I was a little torn, but I knew I loved social research. And it's just interesting to me because, like, as a first-generation college student, and maybe not even first generation, but I remember I took my LSATs, and when it came time to apply for law school, I kind of chickened out. I was like, maybe I should take a year off. Maybe I should just think about this a little bit longer. But I think what was so interesting for me was that despite all of those programs I had, I didn't personally know anyone who was a lawyer, and I just didn't trust it. I don't know, like a lot of my friends are lawyers today and they went that route, and we all were kind of like motivating each other and just like, hey, but I never actually saw someone go through that process. I think maybe if I had someone in my family that was a lawyer, I could probably like call them up and say like, hey, and I probably could have done a better job of like shadowing someone or like identifying a mentor. I know this is a conversation that a lot of people have, especially in our space of like entrepreneurship and female entrepreneurship, just sort of like identifying a mentor and how do you get a mentor. And I certainly have mentoring women in my life now on this business path that I'm on, but it probably would have been more useful for me, if I had considered like law school to go out and identify a mentor for myself that I could call up and just say, are you happy? I think that's the thing, because I knew the type of person I was. Like, I want to have a family someday. And I just kind of looked, 20 years down the road, and I was like, okay, I'm going to get all these fancy degrees, or I'm going to have this world, like, or this great career for myself. But on some level, I felt that I would have to give that up for my family and to have kids. And I don't necessarily agree with that, but that's the only thing that I saw. It was the only thing modeled for me. My mom, she quit her job when I was born, and she's been a homemaker for most of my, recollection. And so I think that was what was modeled for me, and It's funny because like when I was that age, I graduated college. I was 20 years old and I was like, I thought I had it all figured out. And I think if I had known that I had these subconscious sort of like blocks or like mindset blocks around careers and success and womanhood and motherhood and all these things, I probably would have talked myself out of it. But I really wasn't aware that, those were kind of the things I was dealing with on a subconscious level. But I remember a couple years later, I was exploring grad school again, and my LSAT score, your LSAT score is valid for 5 years. So I was sort of like, okay, every year as we get closer, I would just reevaluate law school, going to law school. And this was right after the recession. I graduated like spring 2009, like the worst time.
Wow. So you did take that break though in between.
Yeah, I was a teacher for 2 years and I'd never applied to law school. I kept looking on forums and things like that. And people were like, I don't know, it's like, I don't know. I have friends now that are lawyers and they're kind of like, you made the right choice.
Well, I think I was going to say, I think there was that part of you that knew that sometimes it's resistance and fear keeping us from doing things, but sometimes it's just plain intuition.
I think,
that's not the path for you. There's a reason you're not filling this out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And, there's definitely a combination of factors, but I think, I could look at it maybe on an objective level, like what I was saying, well, maybe you didn't have models of this or like social support or blah, blah, blah. But what you said is so true. Just like on a cosmic level, my intuition was sort of letting me know that the person I want to be 30 years from now does not look like in a corporate suit, climbing the corporate ladder, drinking a bottle of wine every night and like counting papers and filing cases. As much as I loved legal education and like the theories and kind of like applying case law, and I loved it. I think I just loved being a student. But that lifestyle, I think just intuitively, I'm really happy that I was able to kind of pivot and go a different direction, even though it sucked. It's like, I think when you graduate college, it's like probably one of the most miserable times in your life because you're just flailing through the wind. You have no clue.
Well, and you're trying to navigate what you're quote unquote supposed to do and what you really want to do. And figure out which way to go. Absolutely. I think everyone kind of experiences that. Even the people who are on a certain track, I think most people even have that moment, whether they were in medical school or whatever. It's like, is this really what I want to do? Or am I just on the track now and going down the road?
And there's so much pressure, I think, on college graduates. It's almost like they're the leaders of the free world, the future leaders. It's like, it's all this pressure to be great instantly. It's like, okay, you've done it. Now, go change the world. And it's like, you got to change yourself first. So. And
decide what great looks like for you, right? So now you said that in 2011, or it was a 2011 movie, I should say, The Art of Getting By, that changed everything for you. So in what way did that movie affect you and what kind of shift did you make after seeing it? Yeah,
it's one of those like coming to age movies, and it has it's the type of films that I like. Not particularly deep or profound, but I was working in New York City, and I had my own apartment, and I was comfortable. I was happy. I was like, I was good. Because a lot of my coworkers were also from pretty good universities, and we were side by side, grinding it out every day. So I just didn't really want any more for myself. I kind of felt like this is all that there was for me. And I was watching the movie, and there was one scene in the movie where the kid, he's an artist, and he's like struggling with painting, and he didn't really know what he wanted to say as an artist. But the point was that he just wasn't really painting frequently. And there was this professional artist who painted full time in New York City. And he told him, he was like, well, how can you call yourself a painter if you don't paint? And it just like, I felt like I got called out because I actually had an easel set up in my living room at the time. And I would kind of like walk past the canvas every day. And, maybe I would add a few strokes once a month, or, I probably completed 2 or 3 paintings a year. And I was like, okay, it was something. Just I didn't have a practice around that. And after watching that movie, I was kind of like, man, I really need to buckle down or I could lose this, and it was something scary about that. This idea of losing something that you felt you've had your whole life. And I was really, really called to proving to myself that I was actually an artist, that I was capable of creating work that meant something to me. And yeah, so that's kind of what happened.
So then you were teaching at this time?
No, I was a research associate for this financial services company. Teaching, I got burned out really quickly with that. It just wasn't enough pay, and I really didn't know. I didn't really know what I was doing there. I was kind of like, this isn't the best use of my time. And my skills. I love the instruction part of it, but there was a lot more that went into teaching that I wasn't really like, I just naively was like, I like kids. I think I could do this.
Right, which is so much more, right?
Yeah. Like teaching will make you not like kids really quickly. Cause it's like, yeah, you're like a mom to like 15 different kids. And it's exhausting. It's very exhausting.
So as a researcher, I was asking because it's totally opposite of what you do as an artist, and the fact that you had the easel in the middle of your living room, it was just like that dream was there waiting for you.
Yeah. I was a research associate, but that is a bit of a misnomer because really we were kind of like headhunters, and our job was to identify experts across a wide range of fields and match them up with investors for them to have these sort of focus calls before the investors would make a move, on the stock market. And so it was really fast paced, really driven type of company, very numbers based. We had to recruit a lot of people. But it taught me so much about it's kind of hard to explain, but I just learned so many different jobs that I didn't even know existed, and that was so cool. And it's funny because at the end of that job experience, I was there for about 1.5 years. And I remember thinking to myself, like, if I could ever go back to school for something, I think I would go to school for marketing because, I would have to vet these experts before I would match them up on a call with the investors. And I was always like in awe of the people with marketing backgrounds and how much that translated into really big moves for companies, big or small. And I was just sort of like, wow, like marketing is a really valuable skill set to have. And I was like, that would be cool if I could go back to school for that.
So now how did your art, or how did your practice, I should say, change after you watched that movie and, like you said, sort of had this moment of feeling called out about it? How did your practice change, and how did that help you in moving forward in your business?
Yeah, I think I just realized that I needed to paint more frequently and painting every day. So I just started to paint and almost approach it again as a student. And the first year of that, I was trying a lot of different things and kind of painting what I thought I knew. And then getting frustrated with that. I was doing oil paintings and I was doing like still lifes and like kind of like the stuff you see in museums, like a lot of impressionist work. And because that's what I knew. And I was like getting really frustrated because it wasn't good. You probably heard that Ira Glass quote about how like
your creativity or your taste level.
Yes.
I have to find it. I love it. I've posted that out for everyone listening. I'll make sure I have a link to it. But basically, it's like almost like your aspirations and your taste level. What is it? How's he phrase it?
Yeah. Like your tastes don't really match your pace. Like capability at that time.
Yes, yeah. Exactly.
Like your technical know-how doesn't match up with your vision and your taste. And you kind of feel like, oh, like I'm crap. Like I can't paint. I can't. But because your taste is so good, you know what good art looks like when you see it. You just don't really know how to get to that point.
But the thing is to keep going. Right. Exactly. I love that quote. I love that you mentioned that.
I know.
It's so good.
So like,
So
yeah, I didn't even come across it until I think he got like famous with that maybe like a year or two ago. This video that went viral, maybe like 2016, 2015. Yeah.
So powerful. So did you know that, or did you sense that at that time, or like you said, you were going through a bit of frustration trying to find your own style, if you will?
Yeah, I didn't really know at that time. I just couldn't not paint anymore. I don't know. I just knew that I needed to keep going. And I was sharing on Facebook at this point and just being really vulnerable, I guess, you know, posting things every day. And I remember expressing my frustration at one point, and a girl had commented, "Why don't you just paint how you feel? You know, just paint something from your heart." And I was like, oh my God, like, can you not? I was so annoyed by what she said because I knew she was talking about paint abstractly. And I didn't really think too highly of abstract art at the time. I just thought it was like for kids, and I just thought it was like a gimmick. I don't know. I thought it was like a scam. I was like, this is all a joke. Anyone was like,
you had your own judgments around it.
Yeah, I had so much because I think we're kind of conditioned for a lot of us. And it was no different for me in art that you have to struggle in order to make something good, or it has to be hard in order for it to be beautiful or meaningful or valuable. And so I kind of felt like abstract art was too easy. You know, I felt like it was not intellectually challenging. It didn't mean anything. If I looked at it, what does this mean? And it's so funny because I see people every once in a while I'll get a comment that's like, okay, but what does this mean? I'm like, oh, what do you mean? What does this mean? It's art. Like, I'm so like on the other end now with abstract being one of my favorite art forms. But it's funny because I used to not think like that at all.
So after you got that comment from the woman who said, why don't you just paint what you feel? And like you said, you knew you had a sense she was talking about abstract art. Did you try that? When did you sort of give in to that and let go of the resistance?
Yeah, it happened, I think, like after a year of doing the oil paintings. And I started to look at art on Pinterest for the first time. And what was really like visible was not the work that I was making. It was abstract art, but it was these modern, like not interpretations, but just modern abstract expressionism, not the stuff that was like post World War. It wasn't from that era. It was very vibrant, very feminine, and I was drawn to that. And I remember looking at some art and seeing the work that these women were creating and thinking to myself, like, they get to do that? Like, I felt like they get to do this, you know? Like, I like kind of going back to this idea of like, you didn't know certain jobs existed. Mm-hmm. And so I just looked at a lot of art. I looked at so much art on Pinterest. A lot of abstract work. And I'm sure my work was probably very derivative of theirs in the beginning because I was just trying everything and anything. But it's funny because at one point I realized that, okay, you know, I need to find my own style. I can't just like riff off of other people's work. And I wasn't happy. I wasn't content with doing that anyway. And so I started to approach painting almost the way I approach social research, and just anyone who has a research background, just understanding that idea of what is going to be your unique contribution. And I think kind of like my background in research really helped me because it was like a 3-year process. But one of the first things we had to do was a literature review. And I'm sorry, this is like really boring, but
no, it's not. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. But the lit review is this process of looking at everything that's ever been written on the topic that you're exploring. And so then you have to kind of like verbalize that in your report to show that you're actually knowledgeable about the space you're trying to, you know, populate. And it was just, I kind of looked at it the same way with art. But what was cool is that in research, you can kind of like make a unique contribution in the sense that no one's ever took this approach before, or you can add on to something, or you could kind of combine two studies and say, okay, my unique contribution is that I'm combining, you know, this theory from this field over here and the work that this author has done with what so-and-so has done. And I'm able to put it together and say, okay, this actually means something a bit further. And so I think I took that same approach with abstract art. I would look at what people would do and I would say, okay, I really like this. I really like what they're doing here, but no one's really doing this and this. And I think I could do that really well. So let me try and do this. Like this idea of steal like an artist, make it your own. Mm-hmm. And it's been fun, I think, kind of like seeing how the fact that, I don't know, nothing really is original, but
nothing is original. Say it again, Amira. I was going to wait till you finish and say that. It's so funny. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's as you said, we make it our own. I think that's what makes it original. But I remind people, that I either consult or clients I work with when they're stressed about trying to come up with an idea out of nowhere. And they name I say, name a company or something that you think of is original, came out of nowhere. And people say things like Facebook. And I say, okay, what about MySpace? What about Friendster? Mm-hmm. So it's not that these, of course, Facebook has things that are original, not to pick on Facebook, but that's always the example that people think of. And right. A lot of other companies are original in their own ways, or then they begin to create things original, but there's usually some version of that beforehand. We've been around for thousands of years. Why you got to be the first one to come up with something, right? But make it your own, as you said. And I think, of course, that speaks to art, but with any business or thing, I advise people actually find some people that you admire who are doing things that you think you want to do, whether that's authors or speakers or artists, et cetera, and then think, okay, how can I make this my own, or take all of these influences and make it my own? So anyway, I just love what you said and how you applied that research theory to your art.
I think Drake said it best when he said, it's not about who did it first, it's about who did it right.
Right.
I love that line because it's so true. Sometimes you don't want to be the first to do something.
And it's so interesting. I remember hearing, I can't remember who the investor was. I think it was on another podcast. Of course, I listen to tons of podcasts. But someone said that if someone who's trying to get an investment from them comes and says, I'm the first to do, et cetera, no one has ever done this before. They said that actually makes them nervous. And they think, unless you can tell me why no one else has done this, then I want to know why you want to be the first to do it. They said they usually like if someone else has done it and either failed or didn't work, and this is how I'm doing it better or different and that kind of thing, as opposed to this has never been done. They said they sort of like, well, why? Maybe there's a reason.
Exactly. And, I think we like that because it shows that it's been tested, with business and entrepreneurship. If it's anything that I've learned is that you have to test your ideas. And so sometimes being the first to do something, well, it's never been tested before. How do you know? You need some type of social proof that people actually care about what you're about to do.
Right.
Yeah.
And look, if you are the first, that's fantastic. But as you said, get the proof, get the validation, do the test and sort of research things and that kind of thing to see if it makes sense, so that you don't go all in on don't just go all in because you're the first. I've done that before, as opposed to I'm the first, but I've done this incredible thing is why this is important, not just because it's the first.
Right.
So speaking about first, what would you say is something that you wish you knew when you first started out as a professional artist?
Man. I wish I knew that I would like the business side and the marketing so much, and that eventually you'll get to this point, whether you like it or not, where you're not painting every day. And that's a little, it's kind of hard to accept. This morning I woke up and I got to my studio and I was able to work on a new idea that I had, but those days are really rare. A lot of times I'm painting a commission, or I have a set of work that I need to do for a licensing company. And it's just like a lot of emails and shipping. And then now I also have like a whole other aspect to my business where I'm doing trainings and courses and things like that.
I saw that. That looked great.
Yeah, I have a lot of fun doing that. I think it's just because it gives me a chance to like not do things in isolation. We're so fortunate nowadays, because we have social media, and although social media in and of itself, it definitely contributes to depression and anxiety and things like that for sure. I've seen how it affects my own mood, and I've learned to kind of like scale back how much I'm consuming on the internet. But if anything, it has given us this ability to find other people who are doing what we're doing. And it gets really lonely sometimes just painting alone at home, putting things up for sale, interacting with customers. And so what started as me just kind of like wanting a place to connect with other artists and share solutions has turned into a whole other business for myself, and more like a passion project. But it is a business. You know, I'm collecting money and I'm charging for my services, and I'm coming up with new solutions and fun ideas. But it all started from this like need to connect. So, but yeah, I guess just to circle back to your first question, I definitely wish I had known that I would not be painting so much as a full-time artist. You know, I think there's this perception, maybe if you're a full-time painter, that you wake up and paint and you go to sleep. But unless you have an extraordinary set of galleries that you're working with, or an art dealer, or you come from a wealthy family and you're well connected, you're probably going to have to do twice as much marketing for your work as you do creating that work. And that's really challenging for a lot of people to adjust to.
So one of the things that I think is so smart and great about the courses, and for everyone listening, I'll have links to your page on your website with all of the courses listed. But the fact that you have a variety of them, one-on-one consultation, you have Instagram for artists, how to Photoshop your art into interiors, and all the different solutions, as you said, that artists might be looking for, which is smart and a great way for people to engage with you and your brand. But then also the fact that you are thinking about the other parts outside of just creating the art, like the marketing and those things. I think that's where some artists and people in all industries, I know for me as a writer, you just want to be creative all the time. Yeah. And there's that other muscle that you have to really work. So for you and sharing, we see that you've created courses. And what are some of the other things that you've done? Well, it's two questions, actually. Tell us about a couple of marketing things that have been really successful for you as an artist. And then what are some of the other containers or things you set up, like courses, that are other streams of income or revenue for you and your business as an artist?
Well, I guess I'll answer the last question first. I just offered something very new a week ago, and I painted live for the first time. For 2 hours. I streamed it live. I had a whole, sorry, I was just got like a call, but lost my train of thought. But yeah, I had reached out to my audience and I said, I want to do something a bit more than sort of just a time lapse or me painting. I actually want to sit down and share my process and talk, almost like bringing the workshop to you. And I charge just a couple of bucks. It was under $30. And we were talking and sharing, and it was really fun. It was really fun.
What did you do it over Facebook or?
I streamed it from Zoom. So I gave everyone a link to, I guess it would be considered a webinar, and I gave everyone a private link. And we decided that we're going to do it again next month, just because I think a lot of people appreciated just that space to paint. And I've had that same type of experience where I would go to a workshop, and sometimes it's not even so much about what the instructor is doing at that workshop, but it's just the fact that you have a very clear set of days where you know you'll be painting, and it just kind of like excites you as an artist, you know, like, okay, well, everything else that's going on in my life for the next few hours, I'm going to be creating something.
And you're doing it as part of a community, even if that's just you and one other person.
Yeah, even if it's just like a couple people in the room. Exactly. So I kind of wanted to like translate that workshop experience, but virtually, and it would be inexpensive. So people don't really have to think about it. They don't really have to save up for it, but it would still be informative and educational. So I sent out a list of my supplies that I use. We had a Q&A session at the end. I kind of showed them what I do when I make a mistake with a painting, which happens all the time. You know, like how do how do you fix a bad painting? I think those little things, and so much more to come, of course, are kind of like what you hope to get out of an art workshop, but sometimes you don't always get that. So I'm just trying to like take that little segment of this art demo and putting it into an offering that we can do together. And it's funny because I was just talking to the group on Facebook about the fact that I decided to commit to doing this every month, and I don't commit to doing anything every month. So this is like a big deal. But yeah.
And I love that can reach people all around the world. It doesn't just have to be people who are near you for the workshop.
Oh my God, we have people from Nigeria, South Africa, people in Germany, Australia, and that was like, you know, I could never really do that without charging thousands of dollars and hosting a really elaborate retreat somewhere,
right?
To get that type of interaction. So it's just cool, you know, it's cool to be able to do these things online.
Excellent. So tell us now about some of the marketing things that's sort of a marketing thing too, but otherwise, what other marketing tools have been successful for you?
Well, for me, definitely Instagram. I'm pretty visible there, and it's fairly curated. So if you go to my Instagram account, you only see art and things related to my art practice for the most part. But it's still very much like, someone described it as kind of like raw, like the real deal. And I appreciated that. The person said that. She said when she goes to my Instagram account, she feels like she met me. You know, it's not like this representation of me. It's me, how I actually am. And so Instagram has been very instrumental for me in my art business in terms of actually selling my art. A lot of my customers make their first purchase after finding me on Instagram. I use it kind of to send traffic to my website regularly. And so I like using Instagram at this point. It's kind of like a visual resume, if you will.
Right.
So I try to make sure, you know, it's pretty active and I don't stay away from it for too long.
And do people actually buy from your Instagram? Do they see a piece of, because you have, you know, all this your beautiful artwork here, some pictures of you, pictures of your art and interiors. So people really get us, if you're looking at it, and everyone, of course, I'll have a link to it, but it's Amira Rahim Art is your Instagram.
Oh, yes.
Right.
Yes.
Excellent. So do people see something and say, I want to buy that? Yeah.
What usually happens, my audience, they're kind of like trained to go to my website. So if I'm doing a good job of having my website updated, then a lot of times the image I post on Instagram, they can click the link in my bio and then go purchase it from Instagram. But art is funny because it's not a necessity, it's a luxury item. So a lot of times people will look at your work for months or even years before they kind of pull the trigger and purchase something. And it's just something I've sort of adapted to. I think it was really hard because any entrepreneur goes through that like feast or famine phase, but it's especially relevant as an artist. Sometimes you're looking at the inventory, you know, and you're like, how am I going to get this out of here? Yeah. But, you know, it ebbs and flows. And I think just sort of like posting a lot and staying updated has really served me well, because sometimes it's just about who's the loudest person in the room. You know, just having the audacity to promote yourself.
Yes. And I think that's something a lot of us in general, but artists I know, especially kind of struggle with sometimes, because they want, you know, the art to, as if social media or sharing your work makes the art somehow not pure. Does that make sense? So that they don't either want to do it, or they think it's beneath them, and not that they're being they are being judgmental of it, but it's really their own hang-ups around getting the work out there. I have friends who are artists and I'm like, you need to post this is fantastic. Yeah,
I think the old model has very much been this idea of, as the artist, you're not really allowed to participate in your own financial success. Is kind of seen as like
artist thing.
Yeah, it's kind of seen as almost like impure. Like it's like blasphemy, you know, for an artist to also be concerned with how to monetize that work. For some reason, that has been the framework for centuries, that you really should not be concerned with what it's going to cost in the end. You need to create purely for the love of creating. And, if you sell 4 paintings like Van Gogh did in your entire life, so be it. If you sell work all the time like Picasso, then so be it. So it's just like, and I basically had to grapple with this idea of, do I want to be considered a fine artist or a commercial artist? And it happened pretty early for me, because after my year of selling online, my first year, I was approached by a licensing company on Instagram, and I still work with them. They're based in Australia. And, I had to grapple with this idea of diluting my work. Like, do I want my work to be accessible to a wide mass of people, the entire world? Or do I want it to be this exclusive experience that only a select, really elite group of people will be able to experience? And I chose the former. So it's definitely a personal choice. But I didn't have any problems with sending my art off to as many people as possible. Our time on this earth is limited. And I just feel like the more people I can reach, it's only going to help me. It's only going to help my bank account, obviously. But on a more serious note, just in terms of the art itself, I didn't see it being a bad thing.
Right. And do you think, is this a situation where, because I talk often about choices I made where it was an either or I made it be an either or choice, when it could be a both and. So with licensing, your work is out there in the world, getting in the hands of more people are seeing it. But then you could be, and let me know if this is true with art, you could be contacted by someone who does want an exclusive piece of work done just for them, or commission you to do something that's just for them. So in that way, it would be specifically for that one person. Does that happen
you're absolutely right. Yeah. And I think that's very insightful what you just said, because it's definitely a both and situation. I have work that's strictly commercial. It's still created from a place of uniqueness and my own self, but it's commercial and I'm sort of detached from it. And then there's things that I probably would never sell. I can't picture myself parting with it. And I think, fortunately, I'm pretty prolific. I can create work all month long, and I never have a shortage of ideas, it's not even ideas. I don't have a shortage of will to paint. I think it's not like a fuse that comes and goes. Usually I want to make, I want to produce. And so just letting go of this idea of, kind of like what we said in the beginning, that it's not precious, it's sacred. And I have a lot of fun doing it. So it's definitely a both and.
I love it. Beautiful. So what do you think, what's the impact, I should say, that you hope your work will have in the world? If you've given any thought to that.
That's a very hard question, because I did this artist residency this year in Mexico, and the creative director for the program is this Mexican artist, and he challenged us a lot. We would have these weekly meetings, sort of one-on-one, and the last 4 meetings, I was just in tears, because we talked a lot about this idea of the art and the artist, and the artist as the performer, and are you really separate from your work? And so when you ask that question of what impact do I hope my work has on the world, I don't think there's a way to have that conversation without talking about what impact I hope I have on the world, as a woman, as a person of color, and all the other different identities that I have. And so I don't know right now. I think that story is still being written, but for sure, it would be very, I think, not complete for me to just talk about my work outside of myself. And I think before I had these two different realms for it. I was detach from it in that sense. And now I kind of see it as being not bigger than that, but just, and I'm probably not coherent right now because it's pretty emotional. You know, it's really emotional to think about something like that.
About impact.
It's like, yeah, you know, it's like, what's going to be your legacy? I'm just like in tears because, you know, you're faced with your mortality and you're like, well, as a painter, as a singer, as a writer, whatever, what's going to be our legacy, you know? And I was listening to this TED Talk, and a lady asked that question. It was a really good TED Talk, but I think she was talking about Gandhi and, you know, not to like idolize him or anything like that, but she was talking about someone had asked Gandhi what his message is, you know, and he said, "My life is my message." And I think that's probably the best answer ever. The way we live our lives is art, you know, and the way we overcome things is art. And the paintings that I produce are just small, I think, very small results or very small evidences of my experience as a human being. And it's so complex. You know, I don't think we'll ever be able to ever like quantify that or put that into words. It's just so beautiful, the human experience. It's just so fragile and so difficult that for people like me, we have to get it out somehow, you know, like we have to write or paint or do some other type of work that we feel is meaningful. So yeah, I have no clue.
That's such a great
answer.
That's a short answer. First of all, thank you so much. That's such an honest answer and a great answer. And it actually makes me think about that. And I'm reminded of a quote that Oprah Winfrey said Maya Angelou told her. And she said when Oprah spoke about her legacy, Maya Angelou interrupted her and said, "You have no idea what your legacy will be." Yeah. And what she was saying is not even just about the work, or how I interpreted it. It's not even just about the work or what you think the impact will be. It's really how you're inspiring or moving or touching people in their lives. And sometimes, at least this is for me, sometimes I think I'll never know what it'll be for someone unless they come out later and say, I heard this podcast by Elayne Fluker in whatever year, and this is how it impacted me. You know, like your work, you don't know who's going to see it and pass by it and how it's going to influence that person to either do their own work or how they're going to feel or that kind of thing. So I think you're so right. And as I said, you saying that reminded me of that quote. And I sort of let go of this idea of legacy. I do think about impact, but legacy as far as, I don't know. I just know I always say I want to be an example, be an inspiration who lives by example. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know, because I think I'm just doing what I feel is truest for myself. And for a lot of people who've been following me for a few years, they saw my headscarf. They saw me sort of like rise to this level of success that I have while I was wearing my veil or headscarf. And so I remember a lot of women, and still reach out to me, you know, kind of today, tell me that it meant so much for them to see a Muslim woman as an artist on social media and being visible. And I wasn't conscious of that while I was doing it, because that's how I chose to express myself. That's how I chose to show up in the world, you know. And it's like, you never really know who you're empowering by you just being yourself. And it has nothing to do with the art that I'm making. It has nothing to do with how good my work looks. And most of the people who purchase my work they're from completely different backgrounds, you know. So, and I'm sure for a lot of them, they were able to kind of have access to an experience that they would never otherwise have access to, being able to talk to a Black woman, an American Muslim, a traveler, a student, or whatever. And a lot of times it is just people's projections onto what they want you to be as well. You know, but yeah, I think it's cool, I guess, you know, how you said as well, like when people can I guess, put into words what you're doing and what it means to them. That's just sort of an added bonus.
Right.
But yeah.
Powerful stuff. So what would you say, Amira, entrepreneurship has taught you about yourself as a woman?
Oh man, that's a good question. It taught me that I'm so capable. It has just made me feel so fearless and powerful and free. And that's so crazy because I'm from a sociological background, or like social science background, and very much into this. We were kind of taught a lot about capitalism and like, I remember sitting in New York City in my desk job and just looking like, how did I get here? Because not too long ago, I was sitting in the classroom talking about like Karl Marx and, like socialism. And it's so funny for me to be on the other side of it now as a business owner and seeing the merit in, I don't know, kind of seeing the merit in capitalism, seeing the merit in making money, but also having this very real desire to like spread that cash everywhere and just like help everyone all at the same time. But yeah, I don't know. It constantly teaches me so much about myself. And yeah, we're so fortunate to be living in this age now where women are. I just saw Denise Duffield Thomas in New York City. I don't know if you follow her.
No.
Yeah, she's a money mindset coach for women, and I saw her speak, and she was talking about this idea of the female economy, and I just love that. It's like we're in this age now where women are the primary breadwinners a lot of times in their households, and women are running businesses, and they're hiring other women, and they're supporting other women and purchasing work from other women, and we just have this whole economy that's happening now. Because of women like yourself and women like myself that are contributing to society in a way that is valuable, and people want to pay them for their time and their services.
I'm going to have to look her up. Denise Duffield Thomas.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's inspiring. I mean, in the U.S. alone, women entrepreneurs are creating businesses 5 times the rate of anybody else in the U.S.
That's amazing.
Yeah, 5 times. So in closing, Amira, if you think over your life and career and you had the chance to thank only one person whose support was critical to you personally or professionally, who would that be and what would you say?
Oh, man. That's another hard question. Oh, gosh. I don't know. I feel like I should say my parents, but as we get older, those relationships are very complicated, I don't know. I wonder if it would be arrogant for me to say myself, but I don't want to say myself like right now, but just the person I want to become. I was listening to Tara Moore's some book she has. I forget the title, but she talked about, she has this guided meditation where you're supposed to like meet yourself down the line. You're supposed to meet your future self. And she talks about this idea of being your own mentor. And it was really powerful. I did it a couple years ago, and now I'm kind of circling back to that book because a lot of times that's what people have to do. There are people that are faced with tremendous challenges and they don't have support when they most need it. And they have to be the light for themselves. And I think if we can cultivate this idea of tapping into your own inner mentor and being your own hero, and or you're tapping into the higher power if you believe in something greater than yourself as well, that is miraculous, I think. So I can't really say anyone in particular, although, like I said, I had a really great childhood, and my parents were, they certainly did the best that they could for my childhood. But as an adult, that's where you really, I feel like that's where it's really, push comes to shove, and you kind of have to prove if you can survive. Like it's hard. It's really hard, I think, going through life. And so hopefully you have support. I certainly have a great support network here. But I would hope that I could give myself some credit, 20 years from now, 30 years from now. I would hope that I could be proud of myself, and that would be enough for me as well.
You can give yourself credit today. You have done tons of things today to be proud of, and taking care of yourself and creating a business and going after your dream when it wasn't always easy, or pursuing your passion when it wasn't always easy, and figuring out how to navigate that, and the things that you've shared with us about, being a commercial artist or being an exclusive artist and trying to go through all of that and figuring that out. So there's plenty to be proud of. It will not be arrogant at all of today. And then of course, your future self. So I'm giving you not that you asked me, but giving you, permission. And yes, you absolutely have things to be proud of today. So I love that you're thanking yourself. Not arrogant at all. Absolutely. So now tell us how we can support you. I'll have, of course, links to everything as I mentioned, but tell everyone your website and social media, how they can find you.
Yeah, I hang out on Instagram all the time at Amira Rahim Art, and I sell my work on my website at amirarahim.com. And I run a private Facebook group if there are any artists that happen to be listening and they're maybe trying to get some more support around their creative practice. My Facebook group is Passion, Color, Joy, and very long title, but it's for artists that are looking for more support and solutions to growing their business and their lives.
I love it. Amira, thank you so much. This was fantastic. I feel inspired just having the conversation with you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad.
This was wonderful. Now, before you go, what's a parting piece of advice from you to our listeners about anything?
Ooh, what's a parting piece of advice? I am trying to practice self-care right now like I've never done before. I can only pass on advice that was given to me. And someone had recommended this book by Louise Hay called Mirror Work. And it's a very small book. You do these daily exercises where you're looking in the mirror and you're telling yourself different things. And it's kind of mind blowing how it actually changes the way your brain works. It changes the way you talk to yourself in your head. And I highly recommend, things like therapy and taking time to love on yourself and, take care of yourself is so, so important, especially as women. I don't have any kids yet, but I'm trying to work on those self-care muscles now because I can imagine, the challenges ahead. But yeah, I highly recommend that book, Mirror Work by Louise Hay.
Fantastic. Amira, thank you so much. Hold on just a second.
Okay.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Amira. Make sure to find out more about her artwork and the courses and all the fantastic things we mentioned in this episode. To see more about what she's up to follow her on Instagram, go to supportissexypodcast.com. Go to the search icon at the top and just type Amira, Amira. Her show notes page will pop up with all of the links, resources, again, ways to get in touch with her. It'll all be there. Supportissexypodcast.com and just type in Amira. All right. So thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you being here. And look, if you are in the place in your business, in your creativity, where you are looking to tell the world your story, I want you to take my free course on how to create an unforgettable brand story at brandstory.tips. Again, brandstory.tips to create your story, put it out there in the world, show the world who you are and what you're up to. Brandstory.tips. All right. So again, thank you for being here. I appreciate you. And until next time, you know what to do. Go out there and create something sexy. And I'll talk to you soon. Take care.